It's my birthday, which means I get to talk about whatever I want on this channel. Which means instead of Japanese music, you're gonna hear about NASCAR. For a lot of NASCAR fans, when you think of the worst NASCAR race of the modern era, the 2008 Brickyard 400 comes to mind. A race that was marred by tire failures, resulting in NASCAR throwing the caution every 10 laps to prevent them from blowing out on the racetrack. But that is far from the only race in modern NASCAR history to have severe tire issues. And in September 2022, NASCAR rocked up to the infamous Texas Motor Speedway for the autotrader echopark automotive 500. Really rolls off the tongue there, doesn't it? For this video, I'm just gonna call it either the Fall Texas race or the Texas playoff race. It's a race that lasted for over 6 hours, had over a dozen tire failures, a record number of cautions, and ended with multiple injured drivers. It's the worst NASCAR race of the modern era, and I'm gonna tell you about it. 2022 is the start of a new era for NASCAR with the unveiling of the next-gen car. This car was primarily built to be better at both road courses, with multiple new ones on the schedule, and 1.5-mile intermediate tracks. Those tracks are really the backbone of NASCAR. They're what most races are run on, but the old car wasn't very good at them. I mean, there were some tracks that were just so incapable of producing a good race, they got taken off the schedule altogether. However, this new car was able to breathe new life into some of these failing tracks. Tracks like Kansas suddenly became must-see races as the new car allowed the series to put on a show. Heck, the 2022 Coke 600 at a 1.5-mile track in Charlotte was one of my favorite races ever. This boost in quality seemed to apply to every race at a 1.5-mile track except for ones at Texas. And that was immediately apparent during the All-Star race that year. After years of fan complaints about the poor racing at Texas, for 2021, NASCAR opted to remove one of its 2 regular season races and replace it with the All-Star, which is pretty much just an exhibition event for NASCAR to try out new ideas. And that All-Star race in 2022 ended up being ranked by NASCAR fans as the worst race of the last 8 years in a poll. And that's not even the race I'm talking about. By a large margin, the 2 worst races of the last decade, according to NASCAR fans, are both Texas races in 2022. This All-Star race was kind of a prelude to the fall race that I'm calling the worst of all time. The racing was terrible, yeah, but there was one rule change that sent everything into chaos. Typically in NASCAR, if the caution comes out before the leader takes the white flag, the race will go to overtime. If the leader has already taken the white flag and the caution comes out on the last lap, then the race is over immediately. Coming to the end of this race, on the last lap, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. hits the wall, as he so often does. Seconds before leader Ryan Blaney can cross the finish line to win the race, NASCAR throws the caution. You would think that'd mean the race is over. He wins, he gets the check, he can start celebrating in victory lane with his team. That's what he thinks, that's what his team thinks, that's what the announcers think, and he lowers his window net in celebration. But it turns out, in the rule set of this race, NASCAR said that if the caution comes out on the last lap, they'll go to overtime anyway. And it caused a shitstorm.
Oh my gosh. I don't know what to say. I do, but I won't.
Ryan Blaney, whose window net was now flapping in the breeze and an obvious safety hazard, now had to go out and run 2 more laps to claim the win that he should have already had. And the fans were understandably pissed. Worst race ever. Worst finish ever. We should just cancel the All-Star race. Worst Texas race ever. They were livid. How could this get any worse, they thought. Unfortunately, 4 months later, when the series returned to Texas for the playoff race, it very much got worse. Optimism was sky high going into this race. When asked what should be done to fix Texas Motor Speedway, reigning series champion Kyle Larson replied with, "I would like them to demolish this place and then start over from scratch. I don't know what they have in mind, but anything would be better than what they did." And I'll tell you about what they did in a second, but the start of the race wasn't actually that bad. The racing sucked, yeah, but the tires weren't destroyed yet. It was still watchable. It was just kind of a normal, boring NASCAR race. Brad Keselowski and Joey Logano started on the front row, and they were considered favorites for the race due to how generally impossible it is to pass at Texas. See, before the start of the 2017 season, Texas was reconfigured to a kind of unique layout, and it's one that makes it really hard to make any moves here. Turns 1 and 2 are very awkward, but the fastest line is pretty easily the bottom. You lift going into the corner, coast onto the bottom, and then run around the very inside of the track. It's low banked and it's a bit of a slower corner compared to many at these 1.5-mile tracks. It's very hard to pass there unless you can get a send up the inside into turn 1, which is hard because turns 3 and 4 are pretty normal. Because of how much you slow down for 1 and 2, turns 3 and 4 end up being flat out. And again, the fastest line is right around the bottom, so you can't really make any moves there either. And you can't even try to go high in the corner because there's a bump there. And in these new cars with their lower profile tires, it is really easy to spin it over that bump. And that track layout is what makes Texas Motor Speedway so bad. And it also caused the first caution of the race when Martin Truex Jr. lost it on lap 40. I hope you enjoyed that 40-lap green flag run because it was the longest one of the race. The circus continued when 8 laps later, Kyle Busch blew a tire and crashed into the wall. And this introduced us to a whole other possible issue. When the next-gen cars were first being ran in 2022, the safety of the rear end of the cars was a hot topic. They were very stiff, designed to take hits and keep rolling, but this also meant that if you hit the car on the rear end, there was an increased risk for injuries. It wasn't crumpling, so all of that impact was going to the driver instead of to the car, which is not what you want when cars are doing 150 miles an hour. And when these tires blow up mid-corner like they did on Kyle Busch's number 18 car, they send it spinning out of control and into the wall, rear end first, at one of the fastest sections of the racetrack. Kyle Busch's car rotates enough that he ends up just missing the rear end and smacking it on the right side. He got lucky. Other drivers won't. Also, after crashing, he parked it in front of the NASCAR hauler just because he was sick of this. And he only ran 50 laps. There's 284 more to go. We go back green and immediately Ricky Stenhouse crashes. No real surprise there. We go back green again and are treated to a continued deluge of uninteresting racing, as no one can really make a pass, and the last 3 accidents have kind of scared everyone off of being really aggressive. We actually get about 20 laps ticked off, which is impressive for this race, and then Cole Custer and Christopher Bell simultaneously blow tires. Thankfully for Bell, he kept it under control. Cole Custer, on the other hand, went head-on into the wall. Luckily, he was okay. We go back green, and only about 15 laps later, Alex Bowman's tire suddenly explodes, and he's sent spinning to the wall at top speed in turn 4. He spins, and he hits the fence perfectly on the rear end. That doesn't look like a big hit, but again, he's going over 150 miles an hour at this point, and that car doesn't flex at all. He came over the radio and said, "I don't understand how this thing is still rolling. That's the hardest I've crashed anything in my entire life." Because he was in the playoffs when this wreck occurred, he would actually go back out and finish the race 5 laps down to try to get some points to keep him ahead in the playoff standings. That very much should not have happened, as he was tested after the race and it was discovered he had a concussion. He would miss the next 5 races and his playoff hopes would end immediately. So at this point, we've had 4 crashes as a result of tire failures, leading to 5 cautions and 1 concussion. We are only 100 laps in to this 334 lap race. We mercifully finished the rest of stage 1 under green. Kyle Larson, the driver who said that they should demolish this track, wins the stage, followed by Denny Hamlin and Joey Logano. Stage 1 took an hour and 15 minutes to complete, and we're not even a third of the way through the race. 12 laps into stage 2, and Tyler Reddick, who had gotten up to second on pit strategy, has a tire going down. Luckily for him, he catches it and is able to pit right before it blows to pieces. But then, right on cue, 30 laps into the run, Christopher Bell blows his second tire of the race, and this time he doesn't get as lucky, crashing it into the fence. The caution comes out, everyone goes down pit road to take new tires, and Harrison Burton decides to light the place on fire. Because I guess the one thing we were still missing in this race was a fire. He's sitting right ahead of Cody Ware as this happens, and I guess that ends up being a bad omen for him because the race goes green, and 20 laps later, Cody Ware blows a tire and has this happen. He then rolls down pit road, narrowly avoids impaling his car on the inside pit wall, and has to be taken off on a stretcher to an ambulance where he is then taken to the hospital. He is ultimately okay, but he ends up missing the next race at Charlotte. So now we're 150 laps into this race. We have 6 accidents caused by exploding tires, a fire, and 2 injured drivers. You might be thinking, how could this possibly get any worse? How about another fire? Chase Elliott blows a right rear tire on the exit of turn 4 and is sent straight into the fence, the car catching fire as a result. He rolls down the front straightaway and comes to a rest in the infield where he is able to get out uninjured. Ending off stage 2, Chris Buescher spins, not because of a tire failure, but he just lost control over the bumps and ran out of talent, and Ryan Blaney ends up winning stage 2, with Ross Chastain second and William Byron in third. Now, after all of that, you might be thinking, 7 accidents caused by exploding tires, 2 fires, 2 injured drivers, a race that took 3 hours to get 62% of the way finished. How could this get any worse? How about an hour-long rain delay? Because that's what happened. Michael McDowell's team actually noticed the rain coming, and he stayed out at the end of the stage, hoping that when it started raining, he would be in front. And he was. And for a brief, glorious moment in time, it looked like NASCAR would end the race, put us out of our misery, and Michael McDowell would grab the 2nd win of his career. Unfortunately, they waited it out, dried the track, and the cars had to go back out an hour later, with 130 more laps still to run. And also, Michael McDowell's engine lost 4th gear, which isn't the end of the world in these new cars. They have 5th gear, but it put him in a very clear disadvantage. Somehow, he would still finish 11th. They finally went back green over an hour after the race was stopped, and Chris Buescher crashes again, this time because his tire did fail. There was some hope that the sun going down would actually lower the track temperature, potentially resulting in less tire blowouts. That was wishful thinking. 4 laps later, race leader Kevin Harvick blows a tire and crashes out of what looked like a very promising day for him. He hits right on the rear end, but thankfully, it crumpled enough and he walked away unscathed. Also under this caution, Ty Gibbs attempts to crash Ty Dillon into a NASCAR official. He was fined $75,000 for that blatant safety violation. Probably should have been suspended for that one, but hey, that's just me. After Kevin Harvick crashes out, Martin Truex Jr., who as you may recall, already crashed once this race, takes over the lead. While leading, he also blows a tire and crashes out. 2 cars have now blown a tire from the lead and crashed within 15 laps of each other. This Martin Truex Jr. wreck actually takes us to a big milestone in Texas Motor Speedway history. A new track record for the amount of cautions in one race. And 4th place William Byron decided to celebrate this by spinning 3rd place Denny Hamlin out under caution. Hamlin then responds by attempting to spin Byron out, except he fails to do so, and NASCAR yells at him until he backs off. William Byron receives our 2nd post-race penalty of the race. This race started 4.5 hours ago at this point, and there are still 65 laps left. It is far from over. Even NASCAR team Twitter accounts were losing it at this point. RFK, which fields Chris Buescher's car, tweeted, "Caution is out again. Admin has run out of words to describe this race." To which 3 other teams all seem to agree. Hell, even NASCAR journalist and general hype man Jeff Gluck was done, simply tweeting, "What a disaster. Absolute disaster of a race." And everyone seemed to agree with him. Anyways, 30 laps later, Ricky Stenhouse crashed again. Not because of a tire issue, he just ran out of talent and spun it off turn 2. He then did not hold the brakes and reversed straight across the racetrack, wiping out Austin Cindric in the process. It's dark at this point. They had to turn the lights on. This race started at 3 p.m. and has continued past sunset. I went to this race the year before this happened, and we were home by sunset. Luckily for everybody involved in this farce, they were starting to run out of laps. With only 30 to go, we were so close to getting out of here. If they ran green to the end, it'd only be 15 more minutes of this garbage. Unfortunately, it would not only be 15 minutes because Eric Almirola spins out on the restart to bring out our 16th and final caution of the race. As you can tell from my shirt, I did not enjoy that very much. Tyler Reddick, yes, the same Tyler Reddick who had a tire blowing up and went a lap down pitting to get a new one, gets a great launch on the restart, pulls away, and never looks back. Tyler Reddick ends up winning this race by about 2 seconds, thus putting an end to the worst race in modern NASCAR history. 91 out of 334 laps ended up being ran under caution, which works out to 27% of this race. And the real winners were the people who crashed out early and got to go home. NASCAR fans, famous for being very reasonable and cool-headed online, immediately took to the internet to spout takes. Bulldoze this track, recycle any remaining tire of this kind was probably the most sensible take on this whole thing. Other highlights include, this is an unwatchable product, it was, and multiple people comparing it to the 2008 Brickyard race. And I can't blame them, because if you sit down and watch all 5.5 hours of this disaster, it's really hard to take anything positive out of it. It's the worst race I've ever watched, not just in NASCAR, but honestly in any sport. And I've seen some stinkers. Imagine if this happened in F1. The CEO of Pirelli would be in witness protection. But this is just a thing that happens in NASCAR sometimes. When the NASCAR Xfinity Series rolled up to Iowa for its race in July 2024, multiple of the fastest cars in the field blew tires and crashed out, drawing comparisons to Texas 2022. Earlier in 2024, when the Cup Series went to Bristol, the tires were dead after 50 laps, leading to a race where the field almost ran out of tires and only 5 cars finished on the lead lap. So if they haven't fixed the tire issues, then has NASCAR learned anything from this disaster? The answer is no, not really. They did strip Texas Motor Speedway of its All-Star race, leaving it with only one date left on the calendar, and they also shortened that remaining date, the playoff race, from 500 miles to 400 miles. But Texas still provides awful racing year in and year out, and is widely thought of as the worst track in NASCAR. And you still spin out randomly if you go on the high line in turn 4. Even the 2023 race, without tire failures, still had 11 cautions. How would I fix this? I would probably bulldoze Texas Motor Speedway. Expand the Buc-ee's across the street. That's a better use of space. They could also just ignore the oval entirely and run a parking lot race there instead. I think this would be more entertaining than using the actual racetrack. Thank you for watching my rant about Texas Motor Speedway. You can like, comment, you can subscribe if you want, but this is a Japanese music channel, so there's not really videos about NASCAR on here. I have an actual video about some Japanese music coming out in a couple days on this channel. Love y'all so much. Bye!